Whether reason will prevail depends only partly upon us. We must hope and strive for the best. We must prepare for the worst.
Well, so this is my first ever co-authored book, and I had a basket of ideas that I wanted to do books on that wouldn't fit into my current series protagonist universe. And one of them, I'd become interested in how many commercial airline companies were looking at doing polar routes for their aircraft. And I thought, what would happen if we ever had a commercial airliner go down in the Arctic? What kind of a search and rescue would go on for potentially anybody that survived that crash? And then I thought, what if we kicked it up a notch, me being the thriller writer, and there was something on board the aircraft that was a key piece of technology that, in our case, in Cold Zero, there's a Chinese scientist looking to defect. A CIA team helps get him out of China, gets him on the aircraft. And this piece of technology, this prototype, whoever gets their hands on it, is going to be the sole superpower. So there is a rush to the North Pole of the Americans, the Chinese, and the Russians. And then, of course, me, like I said, I was so geeked out and excited to come on the podcast. I get to kind of put on my geopolitical hat while entertaining my readers. I get to explain to them, hey, the Chinese have more icebreakers than we do. You know, we've got like 2 barely functioning icebreakers, one of which is committed in real life to resupplying our research stations down in Antarctica. So I get to kind of weave in all this really cool geopolitics stuff into my thrillers because I say what I do is faction, where you don't know where the facts end and the fiction begins. So that's kind of a nutshell of Cold Zero, the race to the North Pole. Yes, ostensibly to rescue survivors, but it's really about this piece of tech that goes down in this airplane. I was scrolling through social media the other day, and I saw a clip, like a 30-second clip from Bill Maher, and Van Jones was on. And Van talked about how we are divided. And he said, but why we're divided is because we are being divided, right? So the algorithms, the big key for media companies is to make you angry. Because if you're angry, you're going to click, you're going to sit on their sites, you're going to share the content more, you're going to visit more often, all that kind of stuff. So you know, it's interesting, as a fiction author, I was invited to join something post 9/11 when DHS was stood up called the Analytic Red Cell Program. So they invited a bunch of creative thinkers in from outside the Beltway to help them brainstorm what the next terrorist attack might look like. I thought it was a very aggressive, very forward-thinking government program. I jokingly refer to it as the Las Vegas of government programs because I couldn't put it in my books because what happens in the red cell stays in the red cell, similar to Vegas. But one of the things that's very interesting for me is I get asked a lot in kind of book podcasts, book interviews, well, what do you think is the biggest threat facing the United States? What's one of the biggest national security concerns you have? You talk to all these people, and I say, listen, I think social media is one of the most dangerous things we have in this country because if you have people, and I'll knock my own older family members who are on Facebook groups. No matter what I tell them, they are on these Facebook groups where they are surrounded by like-minded people. They're siloed, right? So they've got all these like-minded people who think exactly like them. And what happens in a situation like that is they let their guard down. They believe that they're safe because they're among like-minded individuals. And those are the places that the Russians, the Chinese, the North Koreans, and the Iranians can push disinformation because you believe that everything that comes through that Facebook group is legit. So back to your question about Greenland and where we are. Listen, we are living through one of the absolute dumbest times in American history. Populism is just this nasty thing that creeps up, whether it's the farmers and the thing about silver and the know-nothings in the 1800s. You see it with Trump now and just this whole populist nationalist movement. It's hard to think of global affairs. It's hard for most people to look beyond their paycheck, much less across the street. We know this from the founders, that most people operate out of their own self-interest, right? This is why the founders trusted that Congress would zealously protect its own power. But we've seen since Nixon that Congress has ceded more and more power to the executive. So I agree with you 100%. We've got a messaging problem. We have to figure out how do you get the average American interested in what's happening beyond America and how that impacts us. One last thing, and I'll jump off my soapbox. What scares me is I have really successful friends who are super smart that were jumping up and down, so excited about just the cruelty of the deportations, particularly when people were being sent to Scot. And they thought that was so cool and all this kind of stuff, and they wanted all the illegal immigrants out and everything. And I said, guys, I said, listen, I don't disagree with you. I particularly want the criminal illegals out. I said, I could go on for hours about how we're sending the wrong message to even legal immigrants who don't want to come here now. That's a big issue. But what I was trying to explain to these successful, one's a doctor, one's a business owner, I said, do you guys understand that even the Nazis got a review panel before we tossed them or did stuff with them in the 40s in the United States, and we're not affording people proper review? I said, every time we do something like that, where we ignore our own values, when we ignore the rule of law, that actually weakens our standing in the world. And I said, you guys don't even realize what America would be like if we lose our status. The dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency. If we seem shaky and nobody can trust us, and this isn't a safe place to put their money. So, but back to your question, this is all part of how do we educate our fellow Americans? I'm dealing with two highly educated people that this scratches some kind of cruelty, populist itch, just shipping people out in the dark of night and ignoring judges' orders. And they think that's freaking awesome. And they love the stupid ASMR video that those morons at the White House did where everybody had the chains on and everything. It's really so juvenile and so disgusting. And we're going to pay a huge price as a nation for it, not just during the Trump administration, but for a long time afterwards. It's going to be hard to rebuild.